Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Community in Crisis event tonight. Lessons from Lockdown, the future of the church. It's great to be here tonight with Nay. How are you doing this evening, Nay?
Yeah, I'm good. Another lockdown day. Kids are still not back at school, so I've been, teacher, mum, and work all in one day. So pretty frazzled. Yeah.
Fantastic. I've been negotiating an elders meeting at church whilst blowing up a paddling pool. Just another standard day in lockdown, really. So that's how it goes, isn't it?
We're really grateful that you're here tonight. This event is being hosted by Community in a Crisis, and a team of us have set up Community in a Crisis as a response to the pandemic. We've been helping churches get set up online, running training events, writing blog posts, and we're really, really pleased that you're here with us tonight for this special event and some fantastic panelists. So we thought we'd begin with introducing ourselves. So Jamie, just share a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing in lockdown.
Yeah, sure. So apart from blowing up paddling pools, we've been basically trying to work out what on earth church looks like in this period of time. So I work for a church in Lancaster, Hope Church, and we've just been trying to be really creative about reshaping some of the stuff that we've been doing online, but also reaching out and serving and loving our community in this time. So one of the best things that we did was someone in our congregation, she said, why don't you set up a phone number for people that just need stuff delivering to them during this time? So we set up a phone number. We ended up partnering with the city council to establish that in the city, and we've now delivered shopping and drugs, pharmaceutical drugs and prescriptions, that sort of thing, to 1,000 people in our city. So it's just been amazing seeing the impact that we've been able to have in this time, and the way God has used us to just do things that we would have never imagined a couple of months ago, that we've been now in this place with the ministries that we have at this time. It's just been phenomenal. So yeah, that's what we've been up to.
I hear that you've become friends with the Prime Minister in this.
Well, not quite friends, but yeah, I recently felt very shocked and surprised. But on Friday, I found out that I was awarded the Points of Light daily volunteer award that the Prime Minister gives out for people that have been doing stuff in their community, and they've been prioritizing people doing stuff in COVID-19 for COVID-19 during this period. So that was a real surprise and shock, but mate, and kudos to our team who've just been absolutely amazing at getting that stuff off the ground. But it's been fantastic to see the church recognized in the whole of the UK. That's just one small example in Lancaster, but there's loads of other stories like that we've been seeing. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Great, amazing. So it's been wonderful, hasn't it, lockdown, seeing how God has been showing us some things about ourselves, about the body, about the church. And people are asking the questions, what has God been teaching you in lockdown? What are some of the lessons that you've learned? Loads of people are saying, let's not forget these things as we move back into some sort of normal-ish life-ish. So that's what we've got tonight. We want to hear from some fantastic panelists about their experience in lockdown. So Jamie, do you want to introduce our first panelist?
Absolutely. So if I could welcome Krish onto the stream, if somebody can bring him up. There we are, magically. Krish, great to see you this evening. Thanks so much for coming on. Now, for those of you, wow, great! It's great to have you. Yeah, for those of you who don't know Krish, he's the founding director of Home for Good, author of many books, regular on BBC Radio 2, Radio 4, and a writer in Times and The Guardian as well. So Krish, it's great to have you here this evening. I feel like you have a great perspective on what's kind of happening, both in terms of socially within the country at this moment, but also within the church. So I'm really excited to hear about your contribution this evening. But I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit before we start, introduction question. What have you most enjoyed about this, or most enjoyed about church during this time of lockdown?
So we're really blessed. We have 6 children who are all home during lockdown. So our older ones who are normally at uni at 21, 20, and our 18-year-old should have been going off to uni. And then we've got younger ones, 9, 7, and 13. And they're all home with us, which is amazing. And we didn't kind of expect that. I remember I never went home for this amount of time when I was 21. I left and never kind of came, lived back again. So we've been having all our meals together. Our dining table is a table tennis table now, and we've discovered board games that only the kind of geekiest people in the world will ever know about. So it's been amazing.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Krish. So our next panelist is Stephen Matthew. If we could have him in our stream, that would be great. Thanks so much for joining us, Stephen. So Stephen is a gifted Bible teacher.
A pleasure. Good evening.
And a committed church builder with over 35 years of experience in Christian ministry. Stephen, it's really wonderful to have you from the other end of the UK to me. Just share a bit about what you've enjoyed most in lockdown.
I would say the thing I've enjoyed most has been the change of pace, which of course was from full speed to brakes on. But actually, most of us in ministry tend to live life probably at too many miles an hour. So I've genuinely enjoyed the pace, time to walk my dog, time to do my garden, spend time with my wife, and the weather, of course, has helped. But of course, against that, I've really missed my own kids. They're all grown. I've got 4. I've got 10 grandkids. So not being able to hug them has been serious loss. But the pace has been good. It's good for my soul. And we've got to look after our soul.
Thanks, Stephen, so much for joining us.
Fantastic. And then lastly, Rachel, if you could join the stream as well. Great to have you here as well. Now, Rachel is involved in a church plant just down the road from us here in Lancaster, the Minster in Preston, but also involved as, I don't know if I get this term right, but president of the Girls Brigade. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you very much. And also involved with Youthscape, the Cinema Network, and Home for Good as well. So again, experience in lots of areas. Fantastic to have you here as well this evening, and looking forward to your contribution. So Rachel, what have you most enjoyed about lockdown?
Do you know, I find that question so hard. I find it really hard because there are like snippets of joy and wonder, but I'm finding it really tough. My life has got faster, not slower. I'm finding the tension of being a working mum really hard. I find that I see a lot about my faults and my weaknesses. I'm an activist, I'm an extrovert. So actually, I think what I will see in the future as real treasure in this time is that God has drawn my attention to where some of these things have become idols for me, or have become unnecessary, or he's just dismantled some of it. So I absolutely applaud everything that's said, and I do agree. But I think am I okay to say I might not be able to see it until a bit later? Oh my goodness. Talk about lowering the tone and making it really depressing.
I do resonate with that. I think, some people talk about the Corona coaster, which I think is my experience. Some days I'm like, this is great. Time at home is wonderful. Other days I'm like, this is terrible. I've not seen anybody for ages and there's a pandemic. And I just go up and down. So it's not always easy. And I think we want to recognize tonight the opportunities and the hardships. And I think that's going to be really important to the conversation. So just to kind of kick off with our first question, and maybe if you guys could all kind of answer this, maybe we'll start with Krish and go round. But just tell us a little bit about your ministry and how it's been impacted by coronavirus, and maybe just paint a broad picture for us. What have been the opportunities? What have been the challenges? But just give us a basic overview to begin with, and then we might start to move into more detail as we go in specific areas. Yeah, Krish.
Sure. Jake, did you want me to go first? So I'm the founding director of a charity called Home for Good, which is trying to find a loving home for every child in the UK care system. And there's been tremendous challenge because we can't get out face to face. Obviously, we're normally in churches, giving Bible talks or doing seminars. We can't do that anymore. We're not seeing as many children, weirdly, come into care as we might have expected, even though there's been a massive spike in domestic violence across the UK. I think it's a 24% increase in domestic violence reporting. And yet, normally, when there's domestic violence, children are caught in the middle of it. And the challenge has been, because kids aren't being seen, they're not going to school, they're not going to GPs, they're just not out, and therefore people can't spot, sadly, a lot of the violence against them, or the abuse or the neglect. So that's been the kind of the tough side. The flip side has been, for a lot of people, there's a kind of new openness to rethinking what really matters in life. We've seen that with people on a Thursday night clapping the NHS, clapping carers. And, you know, when I was growing up, it was football stars and it was, you know, movie stars that you cheered for. But now we're cheering for people that are selflessly putting themselves in the way of danger. So we've seen actually an increase in people that are interested in looking at fostering and adoption. We've seen, as you have, Jamie, that the kind of the government, whether that's local or national, calling on the church for help. And so we've been working, particularly in Bristol, trying to find more foster carers for that city, because foster carers are often older. 85 out of Bristol's 300 foster carers were in the at-risk category. So the city had a crisis, and they called on us and the churches of Bristol to say, could we help? And I think in the last, well, since lockdown's begun, I think we've referred nearly 70 people to start the process just in that town, and 17 people are already near the end of that process. That process normally takes 9 months, but Bristol's now doing it in 4 weeks. So we're in a kind of a new visionary, anything's possible, let's give it a go. How can we step forward on behalf of vulnerable people? That ambition is out there in the culture, the government's open to it, and a lot of churches are willing to step up into that too. So that's been, if you like, the highs and the lows of some of the challenge of the work.
Yeah, I think that sums it up, I think, for so many people. I mean, particularly concerning about children that really perhaps should have been taken into care. But I think highlighting the vulnerable in our communities and that increased capacity of people, maybe because they're reevaluating life and they're finding that they want to volunteer for things because they're seeing what's important. I think it's a wonderful opportunity in the church and in society. So yeah, fantastic. Let's keep going round. Maybe Rachel, if you could let us know, same question.
Yeah, so I'm a youth worker. That's my calling. I'm going to be a youth worker until I die. I'm never going to graduate out of youth ministry. And like Krish said, particularly with the Girls Brigade, lots of our great volunteers are older. And so Girls Brigade very quickly actually has ceased during COVID-19, which is a great tragedy. And I think a number of youth organisations are suddenly realising, what do we do when we can't get into schools and do schools ministry? I think what we're seeing from a Youthscape point of view is we're working with a national youth agency and seeing that 3 million more young people are going to be experiencing all kinds of hardships because of things triggered by COVID-19, much of what Krish talks about. But what we're seeing in churches is that churches have taken their youth ministry, if they have it, they've taken it online. And I think what they've discovered is you can kind of do communication quite well, but actually really discipling young people has been very difficult. Of course, there are some outlying churches that do that really, really well. But what most youth workers are saying to us is we're literally holding them. We're just keeping hold of them. We're just keeping contact, not knowing when we're going to be able to see them again. And so it's asking big questions about what is actually at the heart of youth ministry. And it's also for young people, like all these platforms that they inhabit, suddenly all these adults have invaded these platforms. So young people are like, we're out there like digital burnout, because we adults do what adults do best. We rock up and we sit down and we make everything sedentary. The other thing from a Preston point of view is when we planted the church in Preston, we have about 35 to 40 older teenagers smoking lots of fun stuff out the back of the Minster, not wanting anything to do with church or Christianity. And I spent 6 months trying to get them in the building. Not that that's magic, but I just wanted to kind of, it was raining, it was wet, it was cold, they wouldn't come in. But the day that lockdown happened, I had the knock on the door and they all wanted to come in the church. Wow. And so we realised the very day that you want to come in, guys, the day we've got to shut the door. So we said to ourselves, for many young people, they've got the tech, they've got the supportive network, they'll be able to access church online. But for the vast majority of teenagers, the church is now completely invisible. So I gave one of these young people my mobile number and said, knowing that we were sending them home to families that they spend most of their time not wanting to be with. And so I knew they'd be breaking lockdown really early. I was like, here's my mobile number. If you need food, give me a call. And actually since lockdown started, we've been delivering food packages to young people that we know are living in all sorts of situations. I'm sometimes dropping off food package at a park bench because they won't tell me where they live. Maybe they're in a squat or under a bridge. And so I think as a Christian youth ministry, we're realizing we need to do better discipleship online, because that's got to be the future. But also, how do we've taken for granted that we can just meet young people in schools, in pupil referral units, detached youth work. So post COVID-19, how are we going to do this differently to reach young people? So that's a challenge for us.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And I think that's one of the things, God is shaking all of us up, isn't he? He's stripping away what we used to know as church. And for me, I'm asking really big questions of what is church. And strangely, in this self-isolation without the body, I've been thinking about the body a whole lot more. So maybe, Stephen, we could ask you to carry on what Rachel was saying a bit about how do we have genuine discipleship online at the moment, considering all that's going on. Maybe, Stephen, you could help us with that and answer the previous question if you're with us. You with us, Stephen? Oh, no, he's not. He's gone. Okay, Rachel, back to you then. So what are your thoughts on discipleship? Because you're saying that not many people are able to do that yet. Have you had any ideas, dreams, thoughts, not just for now, but beyond lockdown as well?
Is this to me or to Krish? Sorry.
Yeah, Rachel, to you. Sorry, carry on.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is I've found discipling the young people here at Preston Minster really hard, because my whole theology of discipleship is actually when they get to teenagers, you chuck them into the world. You say, go get in it and just see what Jesus does in that situation. Like, it's a school of hard knocks. It's mission, it's maturity through mission. But what do you do when a young person's world has suddenly gone small and they're in this kind of limbo, and they're dealing with adult stress? So I think we've tried to create spaces where we're not talking about COVID-19. I mean, ironically, the one thing that the church is talking about as the real sharpener of faith, being in a pandemic, seems to be the one thing that is not working for young people. Don't talk about COVID-19. Talk about too hot to handle. Talk about white lines. Talk about George Floyd. But don't talk about the pandemic. So I think that's been a kind of a shift in my thinking. And I also do think that actually, whereas as church, sometimes we say you can either entertain young people or you can disciple them, I think we're beginning to say there's only the need for balance when there's tension. And actually, maybe for Jesus, there's no tension between fun and discipleship and, all this stuff. Maybe we can have a real giggle talking about the most painful stuff. So I think probably as a youth ministry organisation, I think we need a thicker description of what's happening at the moment. We need to be listening to young people as they emerge, for them to tell us their lockdown stories, for it not to be filtered through Zoom, but for just to really listen. And I think coming out of it, well, it's too soon, I think, to kind of plot the route. But what we're seeing at Preston Minster that we're loving is Jason and I, we do the 6 o'clock service, which is for young adults. And every Sunday we have hashtag 60-second sermon. So we're saying to all the young people, you're preachers. Yeah, you're preachers. So whose 60-second sermon is it tonight? And they have rocked up and stepped up, and their voices come, and they are saying stuff that makes a pit of hell quake, I tell you. So I think somebody asked a brilliant question in the live comments. They're really missing their voice being heard. It was a woman who'd written it. I laugh all the time about the number of men that have put me on mute. I'm like, it's men putting women on mute. But I think there are many of us that are feeling we're on mute because these services are being done to us. So how can we get the voices of young people out there, I think is really important. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, Rachel, I couldn't agree more. So I've set up this initiative, Community in a Crisis, because I noticed straight away that churches were going for a transmission of a message. And its most basic concept, church is the gathering of Christians, is never a transmission of a message. So our church, Southampton Lighthouse, we set up on Zoom, and it's a highly relational, highly interactive, not slick church service, but people love it because it's just all real-time collective singing, real-time live speaking and praying. And I totally agree. That transmission of a message, never before is that what church has been about. And we've forgotten our values in this pandemic. Fair enough, who prepares for a pandemic apart from epidemiologists? But do you know, I think it's time we stop and say, what are our values? Have we forgotten this?
That's brilliant. Is Stephen able to get back into the stream? Is he there? Here he is. Oh, he's gone again.
I saw him coming.
He came and he went. Yeah, I think that discipleship has been a massive thing, and I think I've certainly felt for a little while like we have been. Maybe this has highlighted it, but been a bit of a discipleship crisis of the church generally. So I don't know, Krish, if you could just expand on that. What's been your experience?
Well, I agree with everything that's been said so far, but you're right, Jamie. There has been a discipleship crisis in the church for quite some time. Even if you think about just the children of Christians in the church, we've really struggled to transmit the faith down through the generations.
Yep.
Rachel's husband, Jason, wrote a book about that many years ago called Mend the Gap, I think it was called. And the challenge has been we are losing young people from within Christian families, let alone the evangelistic outreach we need to be doing, and then helping those people without Christian families to kind of grow and form in the faith. And lockdown should give us an opportunity to revisit family discipleship, because most young people, at least Christian young people that have Christian families, are in lockdown with their families. And so the family then becomes the basic discipling unit. And, you know, one of the joys of our family is that we're having breakfast, lunch and dinner together. And those conversations, what we choose to talk about, what we debate, what we discuss, that is part of family discipleship, isn't it? And it doesn't have to be kneeling by the side of the dinner table. It's just, well, okay, what does your faith have to say about what just happened with Dominic Cummings? What does your faith have to say about what we just watched on Little Fires Everywhere and the nature of adoption? You know, so trying to join the dots for our own children is a really powerful way we can do that, whatever age they are. You know, your age appropriate, I suppose. But I think I'm nervous that this lockdown, with its easing, I'm nervous about it for all sorts of reasons. Too early, second wave, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I'm nervous that a lot of people are willing to make a lot of changes very quickly, like going digital. I think someone in the stream said, we'd changed 7 years and 7 weeks. I'm worried that people have been up for that kind of change because they think we're going back to normal. And therefore, I'll just put up with it for a little while, like you put up with a tent for a while when you're camping, but you expect your house when you go back again, right? So I'm nervous that we're just going to flip back to what was before and not realise that there are new opportunities that we need to take hold of now. And I think that's part of the challenge. And the other thing, I don't know, I wrestle with the different formats of online church. Now, you were talking about Zoom church, and I know that really works for lots of people. The problem with Zoom church is it's quite a high bar to turn up, because people could totally see your face. And if you don't put your face up, people know that you're not there, right? Yeah. And because it's so conversational, you can't just kind of slip in the back and just watch. So I can see why, our church is trying to do Facebook Live. That was where we were doing it. So it was still a live event that you're commenting on, and you might make a comment in a text message, but you wouldn't want to speak in front of all these people. And because we've put it through our churches in a small village that has a Facebook group that every house is in, right? There's 2,000 people live in the village. And so it's on the Facebook group. And so we get a lot more passing traffic than we would do otherwise. But we miss the intimacy that you have in a Zoom church. So I think there are definite advantages and disadvantages of the different media that we use. I know some people have been using Instagram because that's where a lot of young people are. So I'm not sure there's a one size fits everybody. I think it might be experiment. And I think sometimes we've developed quite a quick tradition. So if your church is Zoom, chances are it's going to be Zoom forever, right? And we experimented once and we just went Zoom, and we're not going, okay, well, should we also try? Should we do this instead? So
it becomes like a theological position we hold.
You're right. So there are interesting dynamics at play. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. One question's come up, and this is something Jamie and I have chatted about before, is just how God seems to be raising up dormant leaders in lockdown. And often that's really surprising people. So it might be Vivian Wells from Dorset, who's in 6 parish churches without a vicar, and she set up church online for all these parish churches. It might be someone that's young and emerging, never had the opportunity, never been able to serve their church leadership, but had an opportunity. We've got a question here. How can we practically give leadership away now to emerging leaders? How do we navigate intergenerational groups and teams in this season that exposes our generational differences a bit more acutely? So, Stephen, you're with us. Should we just go to you because you're with us? You might go again. Do you want to have a try at that, Stephen?
I'm with you, but sadly, it's still a little bit breaking up. I've tried everything that I know how to do. I've turned the modems on and off, and I've gone on the 4G, and I've gone back on the Wi-Fi, and done all the stuff that we know how to do. Even turned it on and off. So whether it's a local issue, I'm not sure. But I was zooming earlier on, and it was fine with about 30 guys. So I don't know. So sadly, I've lost the track of the flow of the conversation. So ask
Stephen,
me again what you're asking me.
Yeah, the question is about, in lockdown, it seems that God has been giving people an opportunity to rise up in leadership. That isn't necessarily young people, it could be older people, but people who are dormant leadership gifts that maybe just hadn't been noticed by their church leaders. And the question is about how we can grow that. Well, I lost the question now, but how we can grow leaders that haven't been developed, younger leaders, how we can grow the generational differences through this time.
I would agree with the observation. It seems to me that which has been very, event-centric and large number and big gathering-centric is fragmented completely, in the right sense, in the good sense of that word. And the people who are now leading these emerging sort of clusters, huddles, groups, call them what we want, they're leading them. They're assuming some kind of leadership, but I suspect a lot of them wouldn't even want to be called leaders. It would freak them out if you said, "Oh, you're the leader of the group." They're just catalysts, they're facilitators, they're hosts. But isn't that where all great leadership starts? You start doing something and people follow, and you inspire others. So I think it's going to be very difficult to specifically train that outside of putting practical and technical skills in people's hands. Maybe the best gift we can give these people is to empower them further and to inject massive doses of confidence into them. You can do it. I was talking to someone earlier today about the church in China. When communism kicked and the church had to go underground, basically it mushroomed as the underground church in house churches, home churches. Those leaders were not, commissioned and sent in. They just were there. They emerged. And I suspect there's a lot of that going on at this time.
Yeah. There's a great comment coming from Steve, who just said, what we have works in a safe, stable, predictable world, but I think we need to be listening to more voices from the persecuted church, the majority world, house church movements, that kind of thing, which I think that's absolutely right. And I think this has provided challenges, but also opportunities in that all of a sudden, in our family, we are now the Sunday school. We can't depend on sending our kids or our daughter to Sunday school where she gets taught everything we need to know. We have to do all that stuff at home now. And it has perhaps, in a sense, started to release leaders in that sense of people just leading inside their own homes more and more, and perhaps that's been a really helpful discipleship process. But I think what Krish was saying was really right as well. There's a temptation and a worry that everything just kind of reverts back to the way things were before. And we've kind of got a set of questions that we thought we might try and work through. We're kind of jumping all over the place, but one question I know we were going to ask later on, which I think might be helpful to ask now, is what do church leaders and anybody who's in a position of authority or in a ministry or anything like that, what do they need to do in the next few months to try to navigate the landscape, basically, of trying to regain what's been lost and hold on to what's been won? If you guys got any wisdom on how to do that, maybe go to Rachel first.
Well, it's I'm nicking this line from a great friend of mine, Neil Young, and it's adding on to what Stephen was saying. I think I think why we're seeing in our context a lot of our 18s to 30s stepping up to lead is because I think it suddenly dawned on us that the only person that knows the future is Jesus, and the only one who opens up the future for his church is Jesus by his Spirit. Like, no, he will open up the future, whatever this is going to be. So what we can do as church leaders or influencers or shepherds is we can create the culture of readiness so that as Jesus opens up the future, our people are ready. And isn't it Tom Wright that does that lovely thing in his book, The Revelation for Everyone, his commentary on Revelation, says sometimes we think that the scaffolding is the main thing, and we forget that actually underneath is this beautiful building, and we are building the scaffolding, like the shining temple. That God's got that one nailed, like that's all right. That cube will come down in a good time. But actually we're building a scaffolding. I think that's probably what's excited us, is that Jason and I, we now suddenly realise we are in our 40s. We are in our 40s. We are actually quite old on one level. The lovely thing that we can do is we can cheer on and call out the emerging leaders and nod our heads off and, like you're saying, Stephen, inject confidence in them. And actually, when they speak out of God's heart, God will put a word in there. The other thing that we're seeing, which I think is going to help us as leaders in Preston, and maybe these incredible lineup of leaders in the live comments, oh my goodness, what incredible leaders they are. But what we're seeing is that we're running a Love Your Neighbour project, which is feeding, like you guys in Lancaster, we've nicked your ideas. And we said to anybody over the age of 45, like so I sneak in, you can volunteer if you want to, but actually we really want the 18s to 30s to lead on this. We really want them delivering the food packages to these 400 Indian students at UCLan who are hungry. Let's get the army, let's get the soldiers in the army who are young guys, let's get them involved. And so these lovely young leaders who are furloughed, who are not working, who are at uni, are working their guts off, delivering dal and rice and stuff to the poor and the needy. And then they're preaching on a Sunday night. And somehow, again, it's this, there's no tension in the kingdom between evangelism and compassion. There's no tension.
Amen.
Jesus. And so we're suddenly seeing this. Now, how we take that into the next stage, we're going to have to tend to that plant really well. We're going to have to kind of nurture that really well, because we are in emergency thinking, in emergency mode. So I don't know how we're going to do that, but we're going to do it together, for goodness sake. We're going to do it together.
Yeah, and you're so right, Rachel. So this morning, my daughter every day says, Mum, when will coronavirus be over? And my husband says, well, no one knows the answer to that. And she says, well, doesn't Boris Johnson know? And then, no, he doesn't know. And this morning, my other daughter said, Mum, somebody knows. John was like, no, they don't. And she said, yes, they do. Jesus knows.
Oh.
She's 7. She's fucking 7. And so you're completely right, Rachel. You're completely right. And this is shaking up all of us and stripping all of us away of what we knew about ourselves, about God, about church. And it's really exciting. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a great question here, Jamie, if that's all right to jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
Miles, thanks so much for sending it in. Lots of talk about how church will be different and what we can add. But what aspects of church would you like to see left behind in a post-COVID church world? Krish, maybe we can give that.
So you said earlier, Naomi, that the church has never been just about a meeting or the transmission of a message. And that's so right. And yet theologically, that did become what we thought church was. Within the Reformed tradition, many people said the true church is where you hear the word preached correctly and the sacraments rightly distributed. I think that's from the Augsburg Confession. And so that became the only measure of church. And we used to, as a pastor, you'd go to other pastors' meetings and you'd, sheepishly, walk in the door. They'd ask you, oh, who are you? Oh, I'm from this church down the road. Oh, yeah, I'm the pastor. The third question would be, how many people turn up at your church on a Sunday? Yeah. And you try and think of the time when the most number of people have ever been through your church building. We used to do Thanksgiving services for babies in our toddlers group. And that was the day that I'd report back my find how many we'd have. Oh, we'd have like 100 and 30 children. And then the other pastor would come up to you and go, oh, it's so good. You're being so faithful with so few. We're struggling along with 500 people and we're not quite sure, how are we going to get there. But the kudos was bigger church meant more important church, more significant leadership. Yep. But we've discovered actually that just sorry to use a crude term, bums on seats is not the measure of what the church is for. It's the impact, right? What actual impact are we making? Are we shining the light of Jesus so people are able to see that we're making a difference, not just with there being no parking anywhere near the church building on a Sunday, but what are we doing day by day? So if we can blow that myth up and say, look, the church are the people of God, unleashed by God, sent by Jesus in the power of his Spirit to go and bring and demonstrate the kingdom of God, that would be really helpful. And I think we're beginning to see that as churches are thinking, look, it is important how we, spur each other on a Sunday morning and get digital. And we were really quick at doing that. But at the same time, we're also asking, what does it mean to be a good neighbour? What does it mean to be great citizens? I was chatting to Rachel Hughes, whose husband won that same award you did, Jamie, for his amazing song, The Blessing. And I don't know how Boris Johnson's hearing about you guys. It's fantastic. I'm so pleased. Doesn't seem to be listening to many other people, but I'm glad he's hearing about you.
It's Google, apparently. He Googled it.
Her question was, in this crisis, what will the church be remembered for? And to be honest, we won't be remembered for how many people turned up at our Zoom call, how great our kind of clever backgrounds were, or, even our music videos ultimately. Will be remembered for how we demonstrated in word and deed the gospel. Will people see Jesus in the way that we're caring for the poor? Will people hear Jesus in the way that we speak? That's what we need to hold on to. And I'm excited. I'm excited that seems to have caught the imagination of the church right across the country. Yeah. And that's what I want to see going forward.
Yeah, it does. Which I think is maybe that's represented as well, and the increase that you guys have seen at Home for Good for people coming forward to be foster carers, and I really do hope and pray that is, that's what we see happen. Yeah.
Amazing.
I don't know if you want to jump in on that, Rachel, or if you had another question, Nay.
No, I didn't know. I love it. And because I've known Krish such a long time, what I love doing when I hear Krish speaking is I've been there at some of those moments where he's like knocked on 10 Downing Street and he's made, and I just love it, Krish. Every word you say, you walk the walk, and I just love that. Thank you. So I've nothing to add. I'm just basking in how wonderful my friend is.
It's great. We've known each other since our 20s, which is scary.
Can I just jump in with another question as well, if it's all right? Because I think when we set up the support line that we set up here in Lancaster, I think some people were excited about it. Some people were a bit suspicious, and they were like, well, this is what the NHS is doing, or this is what, there were talks at that point the army might be drafted in to do it. And, shouldn't you really just sort of step back and sort of let the authorities do what they do and not get involved? I don't know, I mean, we just ploughed on anyway, but I don't know what you guys would say to that sort of attitude, how you tackle that.
Go, Rachel.
Sorry. So at Preston Minster, we did have that thinking, like, we've only been here 4 months as a church. Who the heck do we think we are? Yeah. So we the day before lockdown, Jason and I just went very quickly and we just prayed the prayer, like Naaman's servant girl. She sees the wife of Naaman crying, and she says, "What's wrong?" So we're like, who is crying on behalf of the city? Who's doing it? And we're going to go and ask them. We're not going to ask the bureaucrats. We're going to ask who's crying. So we went to the local homeless unit, and he said to us, "We have got to feed and house homeless people when they've got COVID-19. I don't know how we do that." I went to the local nursery that we use for our kids' work, and she said like 90% of our kids are on free school dinners. How are we going to do this? So we said, right, whatever happens, we bind ourselves to you. Whatever decisions you make, we will do what we can to get you the stuff. And so we escalated from there. And then we had a police officer rang us up and said, so-and-so, there's this issue. I can't find anyone to refer them to. Will you take them? So then we rang Preston City Council and said, you've got some great stuff lined up, because you're always positive, aren't you? Always like cheering them on. But if there are gaps, we would like to fill the gaps. And we have been filling the gaps, and there are loads of people. So we feed people who have severe autism, who have such specific dietary requirements. We have lovely volunteers that go and buy specific items from the list. We have these UCLan students who are just left in accommodation where they're choosing between paying rent or eating. Guess what they're doing? Paying rent. All of these gaps. And I think, let's honour the local authority like Lancaster and Preston. I honour them. They're doing an extraordinary job. But the infrastructure is not there. The infrastructure is not there. They can't care for a city that suddenly I was suddenly having to apply for universal credit and wait. We have young guys coming out of Preston prison, and they make their way to the Minster because we're quite an iconic building, and they spend their first day out of prison in a city in lockdown. And you know, there's nothing lined up for them. Of course there isn't. So I think it's about saying, let's all play our role, but we can fill the gaps. And actually those gaps, sadly, are huge.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so
You're so
much,
right, Rachel. I think that servant spirit that we come to the government, whether that's local or national, and we're saying, how can we help? You know, what's keeping you up at night? How can we help you? That's been Home for Good's offer to the Department for Education around fostering and adoption. To be honest, we've been having these, I don't know, every 2 weeks we have a gathering with the Minister for Housing, Communities and Local Government. And sometimes church leaders want to have a go and they say, oh, blimmin' Dominic Cummings, what's going on? Wag a finger. But most of the time they're saying, look, we are here to help you. You know, we're here to serve the nation. Our ultimate priority is not getting our churches reopened so that we can all have our prayer meetings in the building. That matters to us, but it's not priority number one. Our priority number one is, how can we bless the nation right now? What does it look like? And what Rachel's been doing locally is exactly what we want to do. The fun thing for me has been discovering networks of churches that are seeking the benefit and welfare of their city. I've seen that in Bristol. Bristol has an incredible network. They work hand in hand with the mayor. The mayor, Marvin, is a Christian man who has a real passion to bring justice and mercy and peace into his city. And the church is right up there offering help day by day. Same things happen in places like Southampton. There's a great network. Other places, not so much. And you think, well, you know, now would be a great time to start a network that's sought to bless the city, because the city really needs us.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm wondering if there's stories yet to be told, Krish. I think that's another survey to be done. We've got the best reason, haven't we, as Christians, to be relational, to be community. And I think community is a new apologetic that certainly my friends desperately need and desperately love. So for me, being salt and light in COVID-19 has been running Zoom calls for my children's classmates so that they're not so lonely.
Great.
Going around co-op at night time and getting the food that was going to go in the bin and distributing it to my mates who are on the poverty line. But I think the aspect of community, and it's why I've called it community in a crisis, because it's not just a church crisis, it's a community that's got a crisis. Friends want community more than ever before, but ultimately as a Christian, I believe in a God who's Father, Son and Spirit, who within himself is community, is relationship. So I think we've got this fantastic new opportunity to talk about who God is in himself, which is just wonderful. Let's change tack. A massive blind spot in my own understanding of church was exposed about 5-6 weeks ago by some very Gardner and Emma Major, who became my friend. I wrote a blog post on the church. It was called Church Updated, Ecclesia in a Crisis. And before that, even though my father-in-law is blind, I just hadn't really thought about the disabled church and what they could contribute to this discussion of online church. So for decades, they've been running church online.
Yes.
The established church panics in a pandemic and needs to go online, and we forget to talk to the experts. So absolute hands up, my blind spot was exposed. Friends with blogs, and it was brilliant. We've got a question here from Accessible Worship. How much more accessible to people with learning disabilities has your online church been? Is it on people's radar? This is a group that traditionally find church hard to access. Could you help us, either of you?
We had exactly the same revelation. So we are absolutely learning plates on and coming with real humility. And we have a wonderful deaf community as part of Preston Minster, who week 2 said, wait, what was that? What was that service? You just completely bypassed us. And so absolutely, the leadership team oh my goodness, and that sort of opened up. It's that kind of like suddenly your eyes are open to suddenly your sense of privilege, or just this is working for me, so therefore it's working for everybody. For Youthscape as well, we had exactly the same. I think it was one of the people that you mentioned. I'm sorry, I'm quite dyslexic, so I'm terrible with remembering names. But Kay, I think it was Kay, who challenged us at Youthscape as well and said, all this stuff you're doing about moving youth ministry online, think about young people, think about those who've been doing it for a long time. We at the Minster have a number of young people with learning disabilities who, for a variety of reasons, Zoom's not working, online stuff isn't working. We've done care packages, we've done phone calls, we've tried to be as responsive. And one of the benefits of smaller youth ministry is actually knowing each individual young person and being able to work with them and their support network to decide, actually what would be the most helpful way for you to feel connected and involved. So I think you have opened up rightly a really important line of work, and I am in no way an expert, but actually the names that you mentioned, we've got to be listening to these voices of our friends who are leading in this. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, and
But
actually come tomorrow night, because we've got Kay Morgan-Gert on the panel tomorrow night.
Great. She's amazing.
Not if you want to think about it, please, you need to think about it. If we are genuinely a body, this is where I'm being challenged. Body, what bits of the body have we just not thought about? Whether that's race, whether that's disability, whether that's the persecuted church, what aspects of the body have we forgotten? But in isolation, without the body, we have been challenged on the body. Sorry, carry on.
Thank you, Nay.
No, that's exactly right. And do tune in tomorrow. I know all the people that are going to be on that call. It's going to be amazing. I'd say there's a dark side and a good side to this dilemma. So the dark side is many people like Kay and Tanya have been asking for a long time, why don't we make church go online? Why don't we make it accessible? And everyone says to them, it's impossible. It's not, we can't do it. And we can do it when it affects all of us. That's when most of us need it, then we'll do it. And that seems a really upside down way of thinking as far as the kingdom. We're supposed to be thinking about those that can't access, that are excluded or marginalized. They should be top of the list, right? So that's the dark side. Similarly, the dark side around, think about homelessness in around the UK. Yes. Everyone said it would be impossible to find these people homes. That's not possible. But when we thought, hold on, if there are homeless people, the chances are they're going to transmit the virus to us. Then suddenly, in 2 days, you find thousands of homes for everyone that needs them. So that's the dark side. The positive side is we did do it, right? We did show what was seemingly impossible before has become possible. And so that make it happen, dream big spirit is there in the kind of massive social issues of our day, like homelessness, maybe even the environmental crisis. This is an opportunity, isn't it, that we say, of course I can live without my car. I've lived without my car for 12 weeks, right? Of course I don't need to get on a plane. I haven't been on a plane for 3 months, Of course we could do loads of meetings by Zoom. So lots of things that we thought impossible can be possible. And I think that should mean accessible church. There's no reason for us to not run simultaneously online and face-to-face church. That's got to be a normal now, because we've seen the impact it has on all of us, and especially those that wouldn't otherwise be able to access church.
And there are some great churches that are leading this. I'm just spotting in the live comments. So like Fulwood Free Methodist Church in Preston are absolutely incredible, for years working very closely with one particular group, the deaf community. And so I think you're absolutely right, Krish. We can do it when we want to, but also let's find the beacons of hope. People are already kind of pounding that path and making it possible for the rest of us to kind of, to catch up,
Yeah, it's really good. It's really exciting, I think. And, the kind of comparison I've heard as well, thinking more broadly, reasons to keep online. Someone said to me, it's like online dating now, where people, what Krish was saying before, they'll come and they'll access anonymously online by watching it on Facebook Live, and then they might turn up in real life. So I think there's loads of reasons to stay online, and we've got to figure out how to do that and do it in a way that's genuine and not performance based, and harming those discipleship issues that we were talking about before, and all the rest of it. I just wonder if I could ask a slightly different question as well that's been really burning on my heart, and I think this kind of links to probably a lot of the stuff we've been talking about this evening, and that's basically, is this a moment where we can start to we've always said, lots of things are up in the air for everybody, not just church, but the whole country. People are reevaluating what's important. Is this an opportunity where we can start to rewrite the secular narrative of what church is, of what the good life looks like, of those kind of more big existential questions, and some of that kind of hyper individualism that I think you see in our culture? Is this an opportunity to start to rewrite some of that narrative in our culture. Is that possible? Is that a stretch too far? Do we have that?
I hope so. Let me give you the negative and then the positive. You up for that? Bit of pessimism first. I was doing an interview for another podcast with one of my theological heroes, Tom Wright, today. And I asked him exactly the same question, Jamie. It's the right question to be asking, I reckon. And he said, well, look, think of the last two major global disasters, okay? So one of them was 9/11, right? Everyone said that is going to change everything forever. And actually, it kind of just made things worse, didn't it? We just decided to go and bomb other countries and make up reasons for weapons that didn't exist. That wasn't a great response, even though in the middle of it, I mean, I was in Harrow, actually not far from where Rachel lived, when we watched the planes go into the building. And we just said things will never be the same again. And they kind of weren't. They were just worse, weren't they, afterwards? The second one was the global economic crisis. And, everyone said we can't live like this anymore. But actually, we bailed out the banks. People got just as greedy as they did before. So there's a nervousness that we'll be super optimistic and think suddenly human nature is going to be radically different, that we won't be greedy and selfish anymore because we've all had this common experience. Bible tells us actually we're probably still going to be greedy and selfish, and that's a real downer. So that's the negative. The positive is, I mean, everyone points back to this amazing book by Rodney Stark, The Rise of Christianity, and it looks at how Christians responded to the plagues in the 2nd century. And it was how Christians loved their neighbors. And well, we said we outthought our pagan neighbors. We had an apologetic that made sense of suffering, and we outloved our pagan neighbors. We loved people, even though we weren't related to them. There was no benefit for us. And that was a game changer for the church to step up and be the church. So that's where my hope lies. I don't know if the whole of society everywhere is going to change forever, because sadly, I think human nature is pretty consistent. But I do think this is an opportunity for the church to step up and live the gospel. And I think there'll be a great deal of receptivity.
Yes. And I absolutely agree with that. I think the date to watch out for, people, is the 15th of June. Because the 15th of June is when the high street shops reopen. And I think if anything is going to tell us if we've learned anything about anything, it will be the 15th of June, when we're allowed to go back to plugging ourselves in to the drug of secularism and materialism. Will be the 15th of June. The doomsday. I mean, I'll be there. Let's not be around the bush. I'll be shopping. But
you've already been to Costa. I've seen that.
I'll be camping out by my foot. But I think, interestingly, I think secularism is such a bland view of life, isn't it? But I just think, on one level, there is a fracture through the heart of it. And I think what the church needs to respond to is the discomfort that people are feeling. Because I think we live in an age that says if you feel uncomfortable, that's because somebody else is making you feel uncomfortable. So they're being a hater. So you've got to fight against. And there, of course, there are situations where being uncomfortable is because we're unsafe, but actually a kind of a collective feeling of I can't get my self-worth from X, Y, and Z is going to make us feel uncomfortable. So like you're saying, Krish, being creatively theological in that space is really, really important, I think. I think, interestingly, alpha is an interesting sort of temperature take, isn't it? Some churches are finding their online alphas blowing up. We're not finding that at Preston, actually, but other churches are. But we're finding that on the street conversations in the city centre with people that happen to be on the streets, which tend to be quite interesting characters, is just blowing up for us right now. So I think it's making the most of those for whom this situation has shaken something that has felt so strong. And I love, there's a really old book by Henrik, I can't think his surname, called Christ and the Powers. And he says that the church is to be an interrogation of the powers of any ism. So consumerism, materialism, secularism, whatever you want to put ism after, that our very presence is to interrogate the self-evidence-ness of those claims. Well, okay, maybe there is materialism and secularism, but there's also a bunch of people that are living radically alternative to that and are thriving. So come find out more.
Yeah, that's really good. I heard someone say recently that you can't speak with a spiritual authority into the culture unless you're free from the idols that ensnare it. And I think For me personally, even being in this lockdown, I think, you know, I've been challenged on a personal level to be set free from some of the gods of the secular age. And I don't know whether you want to. You guys could expand on that, like, you know, kind of a recapturing of spiritual formation and you know, going against culture. I don't know.
I think do you remember early in the lockdown when clergy and other church staff were given essential worker status and their kids were allowed to go to school? The National Secular Society went ballistic and started tweeting and starting a campaign. They got so much kickback from the wider public that they had to make a public apology. And I think that was interesting. People recognized the moral authority of the church. So actually, when you need something done, Christians will step up. When everyone else runs away, Christians will run towards people in need. And when we're true to that calling, I think that gives us tremendous moral authority. I used to be in the Salvation Army back in the day, and we used to go door knocking, right? And evangelistic door knocking, not my favorite form of helping people to discover the gospel, but we never got abuse because people remembered how the Salvation Army had helped them or their parents or their grandparents in the Second World War. And that legacy of good works just gave such an open door for the gospel. So I think this is what we're doing now, isn't it? We're sowing good works, good word of the gospel, and it will bear fruit. I believe that. And it's as we step forward with that grace and mercy that people will begin to unlock the other things, I think.
I can see something shifting and changing. So really sadly, a good friend of mine died just at the start of lockdown, and she died of cancer. And a group of friends of us, we've set up a GoFundMe, and we ended up on BBC South, or I ended up on BBC South being interviewed for it. And I was chatting to a journalist, and I said to him slightly boldly, are the BBC thinking about collective grief in COVID-19? Because someone needs to think about collective grief. Because I met somebody who is a grief counsellor, and she said, no, in the war, people put grief on hold until they knew what was happening. I'm like, anymore. That's 50 years ago. We've changed. Mental health has changed. About collective grief. He was like, no one's thinking about it. So then I got a phone call from a journalist, and they were saying to me, Nay, what do you think about collective grief? And I was like, oh, well, you know, I'm really sorry, I'm a Christian. Like, my answer would be from a Christian perspective. He was like, that's why I'm phoning you. I'd like to know what you think as a Christian. Would you come on a radio program to talk about grief and death in COVID-19 as a Christian? And we run a panel on it. I was like, John, the BBC have just asked me to run a panel on a Christian perspective. I was shocked. So I think
well done.
Something is shifting and changing. People, my mates want to hear what I think. And so I see this like big leveler happening at the moment. So amongst my friends, there's this leveler with just this ordinary like dust like humans. No one's better than anyone. No one can escape this virus. I got out my friends on a way I've never seen before. And actually, we've got a question, if you don't mind us shifting slightly, from Owen Morgan. Thanks a lot. What should we be doing now digitally to maximize the opportunity for evangelism? That we should begin to gather in person again and reopen the doors of our physical buildings. So we haven't really thought yet about evangelism so much as a spoken word. We thought about acts of kindness and generosity. So what do you think, Rachel, Krish, on this?
Yeah. Well,
you go first, Rachel.
Yeah, I'm married to Jason Gardner, who I'm conscious that one of his brothers is on this live comment chat, so I don't speak too much. So Jason was a naughty boy in Preston in his early 20s, and you know, got involved in lots of the stuff that we're now seeing people released from at Preston Minster. But it means that kind of we've come back to Preston with this kind of tenacious, like gritty, like we just want to talk to people about Jesus. If they don't want to, that's fine. We're not going to chase them down the street, but actually, it's, you know, time's running out. Let's talk to them. And if they and so actually, I think on one level, my hope is that evangelism becomes very simple. I'm going to be really naughty here. I don't want to see another conference about evangelism. I don't want to read another book about evangelism. I want to see the body of Christ doing it Doing it. Now, she says, I've spoken at conferences on evangelism, so I'm being very naughty, and they're put on for the right things. But I think so often as a church, we can talk about the things and not actually do them. You know, I've learned to be an evangelist by feeling really anxious about talking to somebody and then realizing the world doesn't end. And actually, this person needed to hear that there is a beyond. There's a God. There's someone who loves them. There's a great other. So on one level, I'd like us, I wonder if one of the things that's happened is we've become much more in love with our local church again. We've become in love with our locality. I'm guilty of jumping in the car, driving all over the place, speaking to anybody who might or might not want to listen to me, let's face it. And I'm not doing that. I'm doing that a little bit via Zoom. But I'm in Preston, pounding the streets of Preston, rocking up to houses and delivering food to people who in Preston, I'm learning, are proud. And I mean, they find it very hard to ask for help. So by the time they're asking for help, they are on their knees. So do you know what? I get on my knees to give them their food. And we pray together and we talk about Jesus. And I can do that with authenticity because I'm going to bring them their food next week, whether they want me to pray with them or not. And if they say, don't ever pray with me again, I'm still going to bring them their food. There's no condition here. But I wonder if we just make things a little bit simpler. And at Westminster, we do a lot of street evangelism, not with felt boards and not with boards, but we just stop people and say, do you want to have a chat today about God? No. Fine. Do you want to have a chat today about God? Yeah. Okay. Let's go. So I think that's a lot of waffle off the top of my head, but that's like
it's good. It's good. Hey, there is one really good conference about evangelism that Nay runs, just so you know. And I would turn up on that one.
It's just for women, Rachel. Men aren't allowed.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's why I've never been. Otherwise, it's still awesome.
To give a 10-minute passion talk about what they're passionate about. So it's less like being.
Oh yes.
You give the talk and then you go home and you give this passion talk with your mates. Thanks, Krish.
I think we all agree with your sentiment that we often talk about it rather than doing it. I'm with you on that one. Yes. And just to say, no, there is. I think Rachel said it earlier. There isn't a tension here between evangelism and social justice. So Jesus said, let your light shine before men that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. So there is something evangelistic about the good works of the gospel, that as we live out a generous, kind, courageous Christianity, and as you heard from Rachel's amazing example, it's John Stott used to call it two blades of the same pair of scissors. You know, it's not one or the other, it's both and. And I think the church is recovering that in many areas, and I think that's what's super exciting. Yeah. So I think digitally, I really agree with what Rachel said about local. You know, people can tune into their favourite preachers from around the world, couldn't they? I'm going to go listen to Tim Keller. I'm going to, tune into HTB or St. Helens or, I don't know, Hillsong, whatever your favourites are. But there's something about the local. So our church is 365 years old, right? It's in a tiny little village. The average age is, I think, 70, and there's only 25 people in the church. And half of them are my family. Well, it can't be half of them. A large percentage of my family. But we decided to be really local. So we walk. It's a few miles to the church because we're helping out. We walk to the village, and I do my sermons walking round the village, holding my Steadicam, because for many people they can't actually get out of the house at the moment because they're in isolation. So, and then we post it on our kind of village Facebook group, and people are going, it's so nice to see the village. I haven't seen that part of town for ages. This weekend it's a scarecrow festival, not my favourite thing in the world. 150 scarecrows are going to be scattered around this village. Guess who's going to go and do a sermon talking around the scarecrow? Anything that helps people connect. Look, this is your town. This is your church. We're here for you. We want to bless you. You've got a practical need. We're here for you. You know, we became on the map recently because we did a Christmas lunch for anyone that didn't have somewhere to go. And people from the neighbourhoods, this is before lockdown, we're dropping food off, saying, I can't come, I can't help. But here's, 24 mince pies. Here's some champagne. Couldn't do anything with the alcohol because I'm not allowed alcohol on the premises, Baptist. But anyway, there was that spirit. So I think local is going to be really important. Be a visible presence in your community, even if you can't gather. Make that possible digitally. I'd say that would be quite a high priority.
Yeah, and I think even gathering online, we can do so much more to make it more meaningful. So a I've got John, my husband, 2 kids, 2 guinea pigs and a cat. Like, we're okay. We've got company, although we are lonely actually, but we're okay. But I've got friends that have eaten 190 meals alone in lockdown. And so on Friday night, I agreed with a friend, I'd send dinner in the post and she'd send pudding. And so we each other the courses, and then we together and we ate the same food at the same time. And it just our like togetherness, because we were both eating these amazing brownies from Oxford, and my amazing like meal that wasn't homemade at all, it's just a kit, but we're both eating the same thing. And I just think, again, going back to our values of how we meet online is really important. We've just forgotten in the rush of meeting online, we've forgotten what it means to be human. And there's this great book, Art of Gathering, and it's all about like increasing the senses as you meet. And I just think there's something we are going to have to be online for a certain amount of time still, and I think it's amazing, so we should continue anyway. But as we do that, why don't we just think about how we do that? I think it's really important. There's some more questions coming in. Please keep them in. A good one back to you, I think, Rachel. You've kind of answered this, but maybe expand a bit more. And Henriette Boonen from Netherlands, friend of mine, I hear you talk a lot about helping people in your city. What if the church is available, or church people are available, but people don't want to be helped? You got any thoughts on that, either of you?
Oh yeah, I saw that comment, and I think culture eats strategy for breakfast, isn't it? And I think we can have our good ideas, and then we think, oh, that'll obviously work, and then if it doesn't, I think my first thing from years of youth ministry has taught me, if young people didn't connect with what you said, don't blame them. You're the communicator. Do it differently. So I think if as a church we've not yet found a way to meet the need of our community, to go back to the drawing board and ask other questions, because there are going to be people that are invisible to us at the moment, and just asking God, will you make those people visible to us? And I think for us, I mean, again, Annette, you are the expert of your culture and your area, but what we did when we moved to Preston was we began to prayer walk around the city a lot. We just said, God, open our eyes to what we need to see, because we just want to bless this 1 mile radius. We're a city centre church. But then, there are things that suddenly happened, like the Radio 4 programme that suddenly UCLan came on. My ears pricked up, and a vicar in Blackpool said, have you heard what's happening in Preston? So kind of have your radar up for your city and your area. What is the need that we've not yet seen? And it could be, if you only ever access, as your church, if you only ever access your locale at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, or 8 o'clock on a Thursday evening, go out at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, go out at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night, see your locale through different eyes, see who's out and about, and say, are these the people that God you've called us to? And that's when it gets really exciting, because you don't know then what to do. And then what you need to do is involve those people in helping you shape how you respond to the needs. So when these like 300 plus South Asian and Indian students we discovered needed food, we were like, well, we've got loads of tins of spaghetti back at the church. I don't think that's really what they're after. So we said to some of them, would you come and do it with us? We've got some money. We've got some other people, but would you come and make all this happen? And then friends from Forward Free Methodist Church and other churches said, we'll provide drivers. And it has been amazing that in our church was safely distanced, but all these South Asian students, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, who up until that point we did not know existed, and yet they were starving yards from our church. And they became part of the solution. Well, they became we were just kind of giving them the money, and they went and got the stuff, and they delivered it to their friends. How empowering! They delivered it to their friends in the accommodation. So get excited, lovely friend from Holland. God's gonna light up a storm for you in a minute.
That's wonderful. I love that.
That's right.
Go on, Krish.
I was going to say, every day the nation tells us its prayer requests. Just watch the news. Yeah. Whether that's the national news or the local news, need is being trumpeted. So I think, as Rachel said, we just need to have ears to be able to hear it. And most of our civic authorities are under incredible pressure right now. So if you're coming to offer a helping hand, they'll bite your arm off.
Krish, can you just expand on that a bit? Because what is obvious to you isn't necessarily obvious to everyone else. So maybe just go for that a little bit more.
Sure. Well, you heard from Rachel listening to it was the Radio 4 that helped to know about what was going down our road. We have local radio stations in the UK, or local news on our TVs, or local news websites, and every day they'll be posting some terrible thing that's happened, some group of people that's been forgotten, and it's not a lot of research to be able to find out where those people are. When we first started Home for Good, it was because we approached the local authority. We went down to Southampton, church leaders went, and they said, look, we know that because of austerity measures, you're going to have to cut so many of your services. We want you to know that the churches of this city really love Southampton. We're some of the oldest institutions. We're going to be here for now, but also well into the future. We're not giving up on this city, so we're here to help you. What can we do? And the council, they were shocked. They thought Christians normally come like this, you know, telling them off for not celebrating Christmas properly, or calling Christmas Winterval, or having Sunday trading. And these Christians weren't coming with a wagging finger, they were coming with a helping hand. And it just floored the council. And the council goes, well, our biggest need right now is foster carers. How can you help us? And so, you know, it's that kind of spirit of servanthood. It's the Jeremiah 29, seek the welfare of the city that you've been sent to. That spirit is what we need. And it can be you as an individual. If you're not a church leader, you're just thinking, hold on, I'm only in charge of me. Well, there are ways that you can find out from your neighborhood. Lots of Christians and lots of other people have been putting letters through people's doors, haven't they, and saying, what is there a need? How can I help? But if you're a leader, then being attuned to the needs of the location that you're in, watch the news, go and approach the public bodies and say, look, I've got this resource. How can I help you? Yeah. It'd be really, really unusual for people to say now. Now, the thing that struck me about Home for Good's work is that they don't come to us because we're Christian. They don't go looking for a Christian fostering and adoption charity. They just want help, right? So they're coming to us because we're a means to an end. We're a means to finding them the help they need to find loving homes for vulnerable children. The fact that we're Christian is almost inconsequential to them. It's really consequential to us. So we don't lead with Christian. We lead with, we're here to help you. And if they want to know why, here we go. Well, you know, it's the love of Christ that compels us. That's why we want to help. Yeah. But I think if you can come with that spirit of servanthood, it will be remembered.
Yeah. Krish, can I ask, I mean, do you ever get any backlash from that? You know, I'd imagine some people think, oh, well, once they find out that you're a Christian, their attitude will change, or you know, there can be a fear of approaching authorities from that basis, you know, because we have this kind of idea in our heads that everybody hates us. I mean, yeah. have you ever sort of found that to actually be true, or is that just a myth?
I'd say in this moment, in the COVID crisis, I've not found that at all. Okay, even from people I wouldn't have expected it. So look at the Guardian, right? They're not normally a massively pro-Christian, pro-theistic newspaper, but they had a front page about bishops speaking up about Dominic Cummings. You remember that? So yeah. There is a different mindset at the moment, I think. It is true that some people, and this could happen in any walk of life, some social workers, for example, don't understand Christianity. They problematize faith. And so, you know, I'm often doing training for social workers. I've got a room of 100 social workers, maybe 6 have a problem, but 94 don't. And those 6 that have a problem, I can help them get over it, either through just tactical friendliness or by exploiting the Equalities Act, which we've been given, that says you can't prejudice against someone because of their faith, religion, race, ethnicity, or gender. So, you know, there are ways in which we can present ourselves. Sometimes we need to be as cunning as snakes and as innocent as doves. That was Jesus for us. We don't want to be naive and just think, you know, we could just walk in there and start preaching to everybody. No. But we do want to be, you know, innocent and cunning. Those two things rarely go well together, but the church is called to do that. And in this moment, I think we lead with grace and compassion, and we're sensitive about how we explain our faith in a way that's going to connect with people in front of us.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's amazing. It feels like God is definitely doing something in lockdown. I'm sure we're saying similar things, aren't we? And one of our questions we read beforehand is just about the UK blessing video. So it was great. My church, Southampton Lighthouse, was part of that. It was a privilege to see my pastor and his wife sing on that. And part of our Nordival network as well as Southeast Asians was singing on it as well. Yeah. And also at the same time, you know, we've heard that 1 in 4 people are turning to prayer and to tuning into religious services. So our question is this just a blip, or is God doing something bigger? We'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I don't know is the answer, but I've got my wetsuit on and I'm surfing any wave that comes this way. I think the people that I speak to,
the second wave,
Bibles are looking for the Armageddon. They're not picking up a Bible because they want to meet the living God. They're picking up a Bible because they want to find some clues about what's happening next. So I think, like that cunning of snakes and bigness, I think let's be really wise about what this might be telling us. That I think the word revival, I find, is a tricky word because it's loaded with, and it's easy. Like if it's revival, then it's easy. And I think this is actually very challenging times and very difficult. And as a church, we need to be on our face praying, and we need to be obedient to the Spirit. But I think my plea to the church would be, let's not become a church that are divided between those who think God's doing something really amazing and those that are like, no, if you're saying God's doing something really amazing, then you're diminishing all the pain, the suffering. Let's try and avoid the binary, and let's try and say what like your beautiful wording, Nay, for this tonight, which is one of the reasons I said yes to it, was you said in the midst of all of this, God is doing something. And I think that's such a uniting way of seeing it. In the midst of the pain and the struggle and the churches that will be closing. I mean, let's face it, there will be churches that will not reopen after lockdown. You know, the buildings are too expensive to reopen, the churches are too tiny. There's going to be lament, there's going to be grieving, there's going to be death of churches as well as of individuals. But I do think that we want to be the community we want to be the close friends of Jesus that say, Jesus, however you are building your church, we are only signed up to building with you. We are totally signed up for whatever you're doing. We are totally on board and we're ready. So I think we are seeing some real kind of lightning rods of wonder and awe, and let's get excited about that. Let's grieve and mourn and be honest about how flipping hard it is as well. And let's come out of this just more eager to say, yes, Jesus, we'll do it. Yes, Jesus, we're yours. Yes, we're in it. That's my unformed thoughts, really.
I really agree, Rachel. I'm nervous about the revival watchers. They're always, looking. They're like the twitchers outside of who are watching the street, looking out for, whether there's a robber or someone turning up. It's revival, it's revival.
You're breaking the lockdown.
In one sense, it doesn't matter, right? What is the church's job? The church's job is to deliver the gospel in word and deed, whether we're opposed or whether we're welcomed. That's our job. Turns out there are some tremendous opportunities right now. Those stats you quoted from the Tier Fund survey, they are amazing. Nearly half the population have said they prayed. 25% of the population have turned up at some kind of online or radio service or TV service. 5% of our nation have never been to church and they've turned up. I don't know if that's revival or not. I know it's an opportunity, and our job is just I love that picture of surfing the waves, looking for the next one that you can get on. Great, go for it. But whether it's revival or not, our task is the same. So let's just get on and do the job.
I think I love that's brilliant, Krish. Thank you. And I love Jesus' parable of the building the house on the rock, because I think I've been thinking a bit more about the storm warning. Like Jesus says, listen, you are always in crisis. Like if you don't put my words into action, you are always in crisis. The world is always in crisis if we don't know who God is. And I think so possibly this has elevated our ability to kind of think theologically about, well, what does it actually mean for a world to be orphaned from a God that knows them and loves them? And I think if that puts a little bit of fire in our hearts to reach out to our communities in love and in word and deed, then let's do that. Let's allow this opportunity to stir within us something that we see in our brothers and sisters in Iran and Syria, that we're like, why are we not like them? Well, maybe it's an opportunity for us to learn, actually that when you're up against a wall and it's painful and it's hard, that's when the church grows.
Oh, that's really good.
So my question just popped up. Is that
brilliant?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think God's doing so much, isn't he? And I, for one, I feel completely changed by this lockdown. completely changed just with what God's saying to me, how I'm hearing him, what he's asking me to do, how he's speaking about loving my friends, making it, not being content with how things used to be. So yeah, it's just amazing what you're saying. Thanks so much, both of you. One final nearly question, I think, is to what extent do you think the church has succeeded or failed to live up to its calling in lockdown? We've talked a lot about the good that church has done. Has church been good for society? Yeah, maybe apart from affecting loads of people initially with large gatherings, apart from that, I'd say church has been amazing for society. But what do you think, Krish? You're laughing, so that means you've got an answer somewhere.
No, it's a tough question. I don't know. You know, there are some Christians who love telling the church off.
Yeah.
You know, they feel like that's their main ambition, just to tell everybody off and tell how bad a job they're doing. I choose to be optimistic. You know, the fact that churches did manage to make the transition from face-to-face to digital, thousands of churches up and down the country, phenomenal. You know, those church leaders are having to turn into video producers in their lounge, and their kids are kind of running the tech for them, and their husband or their wife are doing the backups. I mean, it is incredible what people have been doing. I want to encourage churches. Well done, done an amazing job. The naughty side of me, can I be naughty? Says there is one task that the church has been challenged to that we still haven't stepped up in sufficient numbers. So, you know, it's the story of my life, right? It's James 1:27. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and blameless is to care for widows and orphans in their distress. Right now in the UK, there are thousands of children that don't have a permanent loving home, and we are not stepping up in the numbers that we need to. We worked out when we started Home for Good that if we just had one new family to foster or adopt per church, we could meet the entire need in the nation right now. And we've seen so many Christians do an amazing job with this, but there are still many churches where no one in the congregation or anyone knows even is a foster care or an adoptive parent. And we think that can change. So can I be super naughty, Nay? I don't know if this is even going to work. If you are watching this and you have a mobile phone, could you turn your camera on, right? So if you're watching it on your mobile phone, it won't work. Let's say you're watching it on a desktop or a laptop or something, you have a mobile phone, turn your camera on, and I'm just going to give you a little competition, right? If you are able to see this, can you see that? You could use an iPad. If you can see this, it's a QR code, right? And the competition is if you fill in your name and address, okay, and we'll pick at random, unless you're Baptist and that's against your theological tradition, we'll pick at random someone to get a free copy of one of my books. And the book is going to be called God is Stranger, which is all about radical hospitality, okay? So we'll send you that for free if you're one of the lucky winners. Did it work? Has anyone tried it?
I've got it here.
Oh, you got it. Wait, work. Brilliant. I didn't think that would work. That's amazing. So even if you're watching this later when it's uploaded, you can still have a go. I'll give another little random in a week's time, but that's how you can get involved. I'd love to see. Oh, go on.
I was just saying my bank details, and people could then just put some money into my bank, so I can go shopping on the 15th of June.
You could do that too. I love that. I would get behind what Rachel's doing. She's feeding hundreds of people every day. It's a miracle. Do get behind them. Or if you fill in that thing, you don't have to send any money to me. It just puts you on the radar that fostering and adoption matters. And we'll give you some very practical information about how you can get involved.
Amen.
Rachel's on my team. She's an adopted mum, so you know she's already making an impact every day.
Yeah, fully behind that. And actually in lockdown, having children who've been through trauma is particularly difficult. I think that's one thing that churches can be doing actually is there'll be a number of families, for whatever reason, that lockdown is making things really difficult for children.
That's right.
We talked about children with learning difficulties and children with traumatic experiences. So I think that could be something the churches could be, that pastoral care of how is bedtime. We don't get to bed in our family until about midnight because it just takes so long to calm people down, to relax people down, to get people into their bed. So yeah, anyway, I'm fully behind it. It's awesome. So make sure you get this book.
Oh, fantastic. Guys, it's been a great evening, and I've found it really enjoyable just being with you and chatting and talking. And I think to summarize, basically what we're saying tonight is I think for maybe if there's one thing that comes out of this lockdown, it's a realization that a lot of the stuff that we were doing perhaps wasn't as necessary as we thought it was. I think, one of my reflections was we spent a lot of time, maybe some of us have spent time thinking, how can we tweak our service? How can we do something, do slightly better graphics, or basically do our branding slightly better? And I think what we've been saying tonight is beautiful. We get back to the simplicity of the way of Jesus in our communities, word and deed, loving people, loving God. Just, we've complicated things for so long, and I think now is a time where we are seeing a beautiful return to simplicity. And I pray for myself, I pray for you guys that have been watching this evening, that we would stick that out into the future. So thank you so much for being with us, guys. You've been inspiring, and I've learned loads from it. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
thanks for hosting. It's been a lovely evening.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris and Rachel, for being with us, and Stephen, who was with us for so grateful for you, and just want to thank you from Community in a Crisis. It's been great to host this event. We'd love you to join us for future events. So tomorrow night we've got part 2. We've got Kay Morgan, we've got Greg Downs from Wycliffe, and we've got the wonderful Jamie Haxby, the Prime Minister's new friend. Come back with your questions for that night. Slightly different themes. So Kay will be talking about disabilities, Greg will be talking about leadership in the church, and Jamie again will be talking about how he served his community. So please come along and join us. But also through Community in a Crisis, we've got an event tomorrow at lunchtime where we're thinking about putting on an Alpha or a Christianity Explored course online. If you've not yet given your friends an opportunity to find out more about Jesus through some sort of Bible-based discussion course, then come along 1 o'clock, and there's loads of panel that have done it before, and they're going to give their top tips. And finally, through Community in Crisis, we've set up a survey, a church online experience survey. We really want to find out about people's experience online across Europe, what it's been like. And the reason that we do that is so that we find out what God is saying across Europe, lessons from lockdown, of how he's speaking to us. But also, as we're in this for the long haul now, what is it about online church that we can do better, that we can keep on doing to make church better for the future, both for those that will never get back to a physical building, but also for those who want to stay anonymous but access our church. So fill in that survey again, it's on the Facebook page. But thanks so much for joining us this evening. Really, really grateful for all your questions, for your participation, and to our panelists. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you soon.
See ya. Well done, guys.